About an hour and a half ago, Israel's National Security Cabinet announced its 10-1 vote in favor of a ceasefire deal to end the fighting with the Lebanon-based militant group Hezbollah on the Jewish nation's northern border. Shortly after, President Biden delivered remarks from the White House Rose Garden, stating that the deal would take effect at 4 a.m. tomorrow local time.
Today, I have some good news to report from the Middle East. I just spoke with the Prime Minister of Israel and Lebanon. I'm pleased to announce that their governments have accepted the United States proposal to end the devastating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah.
So what does this mean for Israel and the multiple front war that it's been fighting since October 7th, terrorist attack by Hamas? Joining me now to discuss it is Congressman Keith Self, who served our country for 25 years before retiring with the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. Today, he's a member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee. He represents the 3rd Congressional District of Texas. Congressman Self, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Good to see you, Joseph. Thank you.
Good to see you, sir. What's your response to the news of this ceasefire?
Well, I think that Israel needed this ceasefire. They have been fighting a long time. They need to get the people that have been taken out of their homes near the border back into their homes. They need to focus on finishing Hamas, and they need to focus on Iran in the long term. So I think that's why they're doing it. And frankly, they've moved Hezbollah back to the Litani River, which the UNIFIL is supposed to have been doing for decades now, and didn't. So they have simply reestablished the United Nations line at the Litani River, and Hezbollah will stay behind that now. So I think Israel needed this, and I think it's come at a good time for them to focus on the broader picture in the Middle East.
So do you think the timing of this is a function of the fact that Israel feels they have accomplished their mission with this conflict with Hezbollah?
I think that's entirely reasonable because they have destroyed a lot of their leadership, and they've destroyed a huge percentage of the missiles that Hezbollah had. We used to hear that they had 150,000 missiles targeted at Israel, and I understand that they've destroyed a large percentage of that. So yes, I believe that you can make the case that in the short term, they have accomplished their mission.
Do you think this ceasefire announcement will have any impact on their ongoing conflict with Hamas?
No, I think they will continue to defend themselves over the long term in Gaza against Hamas. And eventually they may have to turn to Iran to take care of Iran providing weapons and support to all of the proxies in the region of Israel. So no, I think they've done what they need to in Lebanon. I think they will turn their attention back to Gaza. They'll give their armed forces a rest, and they'll focus on the broader picture. I actually like this. I don't think Biden gets any credit for it at all, but I'm glad that Israel is taking time to rearm, rest their troops, and get ready for the future.
Well, I want to explore that comment you made there about Biden not getting any credit for it at all. And of course, he'd like some credit as he kind of moves out of office. But we know that there just was an election and the Trump administration is moving in. Some people think the Trump effect, quote unquote, is having a lot of implications even before he takes office. Do you think the recent election results were relevant to the timing of this ceasefire?
Absolutely. We're seeing it around the world. Canada and Mexico responded within hours of his threat of tariffs. Hamas, back to Hamas, Hamas said we need to end this thing quickly right after, I think it was literally the day after the election results were known. So absolutely, I think that the Trump effect, people are realizing that Trump is serious this time in reestablishing the credibility of the United States around the world. So we've got world leaders flying in to visit with Trump. So absolutely, the Trump effect is real. So yes, I do.
Do you think the ceasefire will last?
That's a great question, Joseph. And frankly, the children in all of the surrounding areas have been indoctrinated for so long to hate Jews, to hate Israel. This is what they face in the future. How long will it last? I have no idea. Remember, Hamas said, if you leave us in place, we will do October 7th time and time and time again. So you have a great question. Long term, meaning years from now, 5 years, 10 years from now, I don't know because of the indoctrination of the children in these areas.
Yeah, and that is, of course, that's a millennia-old problem at this point. We know that this conflict, while there are modern versions of it, is far and away not a new challenge, one that we will continue to have to deal with, unfortunately. But I'd like to turn our attention to another conflict, the one in Ukraine. Russia said today that retaliatory actions are being prepared after Ukraine struck Russian military installations with more U.S.-supplied longer-range missiles. Now, do you think that's saber-rattling from Moscow, or is it a cause for real concern?
It's a cause for real concern across Europe. I think that Europe is the one that is poking the bear in this case, and I just hope that Putin is very patient until Trump gets into office. Because it looks to me like the European allies, along with the Biden administration with the ATACMS can't get to Moscow, but they can certainly get deep into Russia. Britain and France have allowed use of their similar missiles. So I think that we need to be very careful because this is the possibility of a mistake. And major wars start with mistakes. If you think of the lead up to World War I, the lead up to World War II, there was this, you called it saber rattling, but these events that happen, and eventually a spark, either a mistake, the attack on Pearl Harbor, which was intentional, but this lead up to this time period, these next 2 months, is very concerning to me. And I hope again that Putin is very patient with what our European allies are doing. We do not want to provoke a wider war. We need to get Trump in there to settle this thing quickly.
Well, as we know, the Biden administration has changed some policies by supplying these longer-range missiles, and they say they're doing that in response to Russia's importing of North Korean troops. Do you believe that? Is it Russia's change that has led to the Biden administration's change, or is there something else going on?
Well, I'm not sure that's, no, I don't believe that is true. Now, the ATACMS that they provided can get into the Kursk area, which is where Ukraine invaded, and a little bit further. But no, I don't believe that the North Korean troops are the reason. So I would say the North Korean troops are there to provide manpower for this slog that the Russians are doing. They are greatly depleted. The Russian military is greatly depleted. There are estimates that it would take them 10 years to rebuild their military. So if they are cornered, and you know what a cornered animal is like, they're desperate. Do not push a cornered animal because Russia is desperate today. And frankly, I like the Danish model that the European allies are asking Ukraine to build their own weapon systems because Ukraine factories are working at about a 30% capability. So they can build more weapons rather than supplying them U.S. weapons, which we may need in the future in our focus toward China. So I like that Danish model that they're talking about. Let the Ukrainians build their own weapons systems.
Yeah. We've seen throughout this conflict in Ukraine that the Biden administration has provided support, but not all the support they could. And they seem to want to give Ukraine enough to defend themselves, but not necessarily enough to win, because there's always been this fear of escalation. Has the Biden administration gotten over that fear of escalation in the kind of waning hours of their administration?
I think they're in panic mode. They will do anything to keep Trump out of office, and I believe this is another effort to do that. But frankly, you're exactly right. For years, they gave them enough not to lose, not enough to win. You're exactly right. So now, since the election, they've made this decision. I see it as the panic mode to do something, just like they did on the border. They're in the panic mode because Trump will take office on January the 20th. I think this is a move of desperation to try to get something stirred up on the European continent.
Well, expand on that if you would, to get something stirred up, because obviously Trump is going to he is going to go into office, and so he is going to be determining the U.S. policy in the region. What do you think the Biden administration fears at this point that has driven them to really make some significant changes in their policy?
Well, they have said all along that they support Ukraine. But as we just discussed, they've not given them enough support to win, just enough to drag out the war. Why is that? Is it the defense industrial base that simply wants to sell more weapons? The problem is our defense industrial base cannot supply enough for a major regional war in the Pacific. We can't transport people there, even much less the weapon systems. We measure our guided missile systems in numbers of weeks, not months, not years. So we don't have enough of our own. I have no idea what the Biden administration is doing. But again, I see this as a move of desperation. Will something happen on the European continent that will drag us into another European war? God forbid.
Well, you hint at, and President Trump, while campaigning, seems to believe that he can bring this conflict to an expeditious end. How would he do that?
Real simple. First of all, enforce the sanctions on Russian oil. Export LNG to Europe so that they would be dependent on American energy, not Russian energy. That would starve the Russian war machine. They sell their oil surreptitiously around the world, clandestinely around the world, and that is what is funding their basic wartime economy, which is what they have today, a wartime economy funded by the sales of their fossil fuels, and we would cut that off. We would also cut off weapon systems coming from Iran, North Korea, and China. And frankly, we would starve Russia out, and they would then come to the table.
Well, in about 30 seconds, if it would be that simple to starve Russia's military capability, why hasn't that been done already?
Look, the Biden administration has not enforced the sanction against either Russia or Iran. Take Iran. They had $4 billion when Trump left office. They now have like $100 billion in reserves. Why? Because we don't enforce the sanctions on Iran oil export that we should be enforcing. We can also starve Iran. But Russia is what we're discussing here. We can do it very easily. Just cut off their exports, enforce the sanctions around the world. And I think Trump will probably do that, along with us drilling, pulling our gold, our liquid gold out of the ground. I think we'll put a quick end to this.
That would be good news for all of us. Congressman Keith Self, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.